The other framework I'll give you is MIT historically did a lot worse in terms of the number of big companies versus Stanford. And the ethos at MIT, whenever we'd go there, it was very often, I have a magic box, and this magic box does this new thing. It's like a new, really powerful database, or it's like a new, really cool breakthrough in physics. And here's what the magic box does. And now I'm going to build a business using this magic box around the magic box because the magic box is valuable. So it's like, and it turns out that's like a horrible way to build a business. The best way to build a business is don't start with a magic box. Start with like here's the need, here's the problem, here's the pain point, here's the stuff that needs to be solved. And now we're going to kind of build things to it. And if you happen to have a magic box that fits that, that's great. But more likely you're gonna have to build a lot of stuff to fix it. And that's more of the kind of Silicon Valley history.
So you mentioned about if you have good tech, but the market forces aren't there, you're going to fail. And what are some indicators that market forces are starting to turn in favor of a certain industry? Not catch it too late.
Well, it depends on the industry. In some cases, if you have good tech, but it's just really hard to break into something that's like an oligopoly. It doesn't really have the incentives. A lot of health systems should want to save money, but they're not really incentivized because they're kind of a monopoly. It makes a lot of money. The thing you have to do is like, what's the need you're solving that's gonna like make them happy? Do you see like a market need where this is gonna save them money? Is there someone who's just a huge headache and you're gonna like make their headache go away? Who's gonna be able to be an ally enough to buy it? Like in a lot of cases, the buyer really is the board or the CEO because you're just like saving the whole company money. But the IT guys hate you because you're kind of replacing some of them, right? That was a lot of case with Palantir. It's like we have to go to the board in some cases because you're going to save them a ton of money, but the IT guys are like antibodies because they realize half of what they're doing is not going to be needed anymore. And so it's more like a human nature, institutional nature, hack the world problem. This is why Karp was so valuable at Palantir. There's 5 co-founders of Palantir, and Alice Karp was not at all technical, but he had a PhD from Habermas in philosophy, and he understands people and institutions really, really deeply. And it turns out that's pretty helpful for certain types of companies. So you really got to see like who's your buyer, what's the force that's going to let you make it work. And it's actually kind of really annoying. You have to be really good at tech, and you have to have someone who understands the tech and product well enough who's really good at talking to people. And you have to go talk to a lot of people, and you got to kind of figure out like what they want, what's the need you're solving.
When we talk about lessons from Peter Thiel, I think one of the most important ones I've seen from him that I've definitely taken to heart in what I've done is I'd much rather hire for talent and ambition and hard work than hire for expertise. And there's exceptions, right? So if you have a company that's already really working and already really scaling, and there's like a machine that has to be run, you want to hire the guy who knows how to run the machine. That's fine. That's the operator who knows what they're doing already. But before you've actually built the machine, or when you're doing something with a group in like kind of high finance or whatever, you want to hire for raw IQ and hard work and just iterating and figuring it out. And that's a different skill set than the people who run the machines.
What's your way of filtering for that IQ? How do you interview, or what are the signals you look for?
This is like super hard. I think you start with like
hard math problems at people. What are you doing?
We used to do that at Clarion. We had these really hard problems. I remember my friend Sujio ran Dropbox. One of his partners there at his new ventures, Chen Li, was like the highest scorer on this test I gave. He's a smart guy. We had to do really hard tests. But once I already had around me a bunch of people who were really top talent, it's like they knew people like, oh, who was the smartest guy in your physics PhD at MIT? Who was, things like that. So it's like you kind of get a network that's already really solid, and then you go out from there.
And so let's go more on that. So 2 things. One, Ben told me something that like, there's some number, I don't know the exact number, 20, 30 people who have worked at your companies that have then gone on to start like unicorn companies. Dude, what is that number roughly?
Oh gosh, I don't actually keep track of the official number, but there's over 20 people who've worked directly for me who've started huge companies. And it's something I'm really proud of, is that we've had a lot of super talented people. And, in some ways it's like, I like to like back my mind, like, oh yeah, I'm a great guy. I take credit for shaping them. But in some ways it's like, they were already really amazing. And so maybe I'm just good at convincing them to have worked with me ahead of time,
Right.
So it's like, there's
a nature nurture thing, right? So
there's some of both. I do like to think that we've given them useful frameworks, just like I learned from Peter. They might have learned some of these things from me too, but I mean, one of the ones, not all of them I've even backed. Like some of them I backed, some of them went off and then did it themselves. And
right,
which usually they let me back them. Though.
Yeah, yeah, that's the worst when you didn't get the call.
Actually, I'm still proud. I'm still proud of. Like I'll tell you, the guy who came right out of school to help run Addepar with me, and I was like, he became president of the company, super talented guy. And I did not know what I was doing, even though I just already done Palantir. There's all these mistakes I was making because there's like things I didn't realize I had advantages of Palantir. And Addepar is a multi-billion-dollar company now. It's great, but there's things that took longer. There's mistakes, but there's also obviously good things we did because the company worked out really well. And I think he had like one off on his own, and he had like his own tough time or whatever for a little while afterwards. And then he ended up partnering with someone, and he started a company that became worth $3 billion in like 4 years, and he sold it.
Wow.
Which I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. They didn't bring anyone else into that company, but I was still really proud of the fact that I'd worked with this guy, right. And then he'd gone on and had like crazy success. I mean, it's a cool feeling,
Right. But for the record, I'm more proud if I got to invest too, right?
I know, come on, let's take care of your buddies.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it was most of the, like 95% of them. It's like people will bring me in and I'll still like help them, we'll coach and work with them together.
You seem eager to innovate also in the sectors that are the hardest to innovate in, like
Yes.
literally the most almost look impossible to innovate. What am I
Well-
talking about?
well,
I'm talking
what's-
about prisons, hospitals, and higher education. These are, you've never even heard of a new college, and here we are in a new college. So why is it that you're also, are you just like a masochist? Is it that
Sometimes it seems like that. No, it's no, everything's great here. The way I look at that is so there's these underlying things that happen in the world that make new things possible, and then they usually go to certain places first, and then they go to other places later.
Mhm.
And so they almost always go to healthcare and government and institutional places like universities last,
Mhm.
because these are harder. But because these are harder, the way you can think about it, it's like there's an island in the middle of the ocean that has like a bunch of animals that just only evolved to live on that island. And all of a sudden there's like a raft from the mainland, and like something that evolved to be competitive in like a much larger, more ferocious environment lands there. And then it just like beats the crap out of these like weird animals, because like they've been protected from the ocean for, for 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And so what it is that like you get things in government and healthcare and universities get particularly broken because it's so hard. So if you are able to get in, you're just so much better,
Mm.
right? So this, I think this like counterintuitively, this stuff where it looks harder to innovate, if you're stubborn enough and persistent enough to break in, it's actually in some ways easier, because you're just going to be so much better than what's already there,
There's like-
because
there's
it's
like-
hard. you
There's
know?
a ton of low hanging fruit in terms of actually how you could innovate. It's just that you can't get past those.
If you could just like climb that fence and get in there's going to be all these delicious animals to eat because they didn't evolve to run away from you. But you have to like get in there past that barrier first. Yeah.
We're not talking about the students. It's an analogy, folks.
Well, and then we're talking about the competition.
When you look at AI, there's really, I think, 5 ways people are investing in AI at a high level. There's the bottom level, which is the chip companies. There's the next one, which is the data centers. Pretty much all of my friends' family offices who made money the last 20 years in tech have been putting lots of money in data centers. It's become a very popular trade, which is great because you guys are funding stuff for me to build on top of. So I appreciate that. Keep funding data centers. I don't know if it's going to work with this much money, but that's great because it's cheap for me. And then the level 3 is the model companies, which is like OpenAI, of course, famously, which besides it's a for-profit company now too, and XAI and Anthropic and everything. And then level 4 is software infrastructure. This is how you deploy AI. And that's obviously, there's a ton of, I think San Francisco is probably the center of that. There's a ton of very, very powerful software infrastructure companies. We were invested, for example, in Olama, which like over 1 million engineers use to deploy their Llama models. There's a lot of good stuff there that makes sense. Palantir does a lot of stuff, level 4. And then there's level 5, which is actually this like applying the AI to services itself, like actually the one doing the healthcare billing, doing the logistics billing, doing the new legal company, doing the new back end of the insurance or trust or estate or whatever it is. And so most of, I'm obviously invested in stuff like, I'm proud to be invested in stuff that like, if Elon starts a company in level 3 at XAI, that's great. I want to be involved in that. Obviously in Palantir and lots of level 4 things, but most of what I'm building and doing is level 5 right now. And if the way I think about level 5 is there's probably about $5 trillion right now paid out in wages in the services economy in the US. And about 2 of that 5 trillion, about 40%, is in areas of the service economy that we've already shown we could double the productivity. This is very important. This is not like maybe when models get better. This is today, based on things we're seeing, we've already shown these companies can work at least twice as well. And this is things like, I have a healthcare billing company that's doing a bunch of stuff that we're big investors in. And it's already got, I think last quarter was like 56% margins. And like most healthcare billing companies are between 15 and I think 25% margins, right? So it's already more than twice or 3 times as productive with a lot of our companies, thanks to not just sprinkling a little bit of AI, but thanks to building a lot of stuff and applying AI properly. And so this is a huge fact, because even if AI gets no better from here, just by scaling these things, you should pull like $1 trillion of spend out of the economy. And I think it gets better enough. There's probably $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion you're going to pull out of the economy in the next 10 years. That's a massive, massive productivity boost. And we're going to make a lot of money. We're going to make America a lot richer.
So like, I think a lot of the big generative AI winners so far have been really the large firms, the OpenAIs, Anthropics, NVIDIAs, Google, and so forth. The ones that can, lay down the fixed costs to actually build a large.
Well, they've been the level 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4 firms mostly, and then level 5 is like just starting to scale still. That's right.
Really, and I mean, do you think that it's possible for AI upstarts to really sort of latch on and without getting sort of outcompeted by one of the big guys. Like I feel like I remember there's one startup that created this video, generative AI model, and then raised $30 million, and then the next day OpenAI builds essentially the same product and releases it.
Totally.
That whole
I
startup.
think that's very, very hard. So there's two. I'm going to answer this in two ways. First of all, let's just think about the last 15 years of tech to put it in context. So after Palantir started Addepar, which is a leading wealth management technology company. It's a giant SaaS company. We sold OpenGov this year, which we built, and my friends invested in a bunch of my friends built a lot of SaaS companies. And the SaaS companies that my friends built in like the early 2010s had a very high success rate. And I could say it's because I'm some kind of genius or something, but what was actually happening with these is the cloud was newly possible. There's new things you do in big data, and our competition was stuff mostly from the 1980s and 1990s. So you can kind of be we have access to the best tech cultures in the world. That's my background. So it's kind of like being a bully. It's like we're taking the very best tech guys in the world and we're going and beating up on these poor things from 10 or 20 years ago. And by the way, it's good for the economy to do this. It's not like a morally incorrect thing, but you can kind of think of it. Yeah, you're being a bully versus these old ways of doing things. Now, if you want to start a SaaS company, if anyone in here wants to start something and compete against something in one of the major areas of SaaS and cloud, you're mostly probably competing against the stuff my friends and I and others built in the early 2010s. And that's a lot harder because there's not going to be as big of a gap there. And by the way, all this AI stuff, our companies are going to use it too. So these 10, 15-year-old SaaS companies, they're also using AI. Like, good luck trying to start a new AI SaaS company against them. They also have 300 million of revenue and 1,000 people, and they already have all the customers. So that's really hard. So that's a dumb thing to do. That's really hard. So the question is, what is there to do? So you go back to those 5 levels of AI. A new chip company, that sounds really hard. It's probably possible for a couple EE geniuses to figure something out new, but that's really tough. It's very expensive to do these things. The data center is fine. Everyone's going to invest in that. I'd like you to do that for me. Like level 3 is like the only person I would have ever backed with a new one of those was Elon. That's great because Elon is Elon. So of course they're going to back XAI, even though it was a ridiculous price when he started, but whatever, it's Elon. And then he has a top talent. He's probably going to figure it out. But yeah, I would not suggest trying to do that. So the question is level 4, level 5. Level 4 is really hard. And the problem with level 4 is that there will be some things that win. There will be some things that get bought. But it's like the smartest people in the world are all doing it. And you're right. What you just said, level 3 is trying to eat level 4. All these level 3 companies, they just want to own level 4 themselves. And so it's really hard. Like, how do you do something that OpenAI or X or Anthropic or something is not just going to eat, not just going to do themselves? It is possible, but it's tough. And you better be really the best in the world. And you better be really running fast. And it's not even clear to me yet what has to escape velocity and what doesn't. So that's a very fair question. Level 5, I think, is by far the best risk reward place to build because you have a lot of other things we're doing there. And going back to that model I just gave you of those SaaS companies that were beating up from 20 years ago, when I'm starting a level 5 company right now, my competition is these guys from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. Like, we're literally competing against a logistics biller in Baton Rouge for a thing we just won, and I'm sure they're great people. They've been doing this for 50 years, but they just don't have the same ability to build and apply tech the way we do and to service the customer the way we do. And so if you can build a great operational culture, you can compete and win there. And I do think there's moats and barriers to entry at having great operational cultures that build and apply AI. So I think level 5 is a great place to build. I think level 4 for a few geniuses is going to be great, but man, that's hard. I wouldn't want to try to do that.
It's actually really, really hard to start these things. And from the outside, when you look at any of these companies you've heard about, if you think of it as a graph and you think it's just like always going up and to the right, and it's like, oh, it's amazing how well they're doing. That's totally not how any of these companies work. It's always like up and down and up and down. Like anything in life you're trying to do, there's like a lot of times when everyone thinks it's failing. And your job as a leader is to kind of have this energy inside you that just you believe really hard. You kind of pour that into everyone around you. And there's times when everyone wants to quit, everyone's questioning it, and it's your job to kind of like to somehow rally them and somehow believe enough that you convince them to keep going. And that's true for like every great company I've seen or every great mission you're on. It's always going to go up and down. And so that's really what it is about having the passion and the inspiration and about like helping others believe. And that's something that's very tough to do. Especially because you might not even be right, but you have to do your best to assume you're right and keep learning and pushing in the right direction.
I usually tell people you're going to have a little bit less salary, but the upside is going to be worth so much when you get there that overall you're going to make a lot more money. I don't think it's ever a good pitch that someone's going to make less money over long term. I think you want people to be part of something that they're going to do really well in if they can. So for me anyway, that's the pitch I usually have. Palantir had very low salaries. Actually when I was working with Peter Thiel, must have been 21 or so, we conducted a study he had me look into of CEO salaries. And so it turned out there were 3 different cohorts. At the time, salaries were lower. This was turning 42 this week. So this is 21 years ago. But it was like, there was one band was like 75K and under. There was like 75K to 120, and there was 120 and above. And the CEOs for startups that were 75K and under, like just massively outperformed the ones that were 120K and above. And it was kind of mixed for the middle salaries, but it was like, but the low salary CEOs just massively outperformed. And there was something about like just, it was very clear they were there to get upside and not to get paid. Because especially it got even worse when you got even the higher salary, like 200, 300K salary CEO for startups, which is like massive underperformance versus low salary ones. So it's interesting.
Fascinating. Do you think that still holds?
I think the bands would be different today because I think you can't even live on that much money in these expensive areas very well, which is maybe obnoxious to say for people listening in other areas, but these are really expensive areas to live. So you probably need to raise the bands. But yeah, I think it's definitely still a really important indicator. It's not like the main thing for how we invest, obviously, but it's definitely one of like the 10 things you want to check when you're investing in a company early stage is if they're there to pay themselves a huge amount, that's a huge red flag.